Twisting and bending his enormous mass, Leon crushes the rice cart. I've seen some big crocodiles before, but nothing like this. The world's biggest man-eating croc has finally been caught, and it's absolutely terrifying. This thing is massive, powerful, and has been linked to multiple attacks over the years. Locals have feared it for ages, and attempts to capture it kept failing. But now that it's finally been brought in, we're getting a good look at just how dangerous it really was. And honestly, it's a miracle anyone ever survived an encounter with a beast known as Lolong. In 2011, a town in the Philippines basically went to war with a crocodile. Not just any croc, a 20 feet, 2,370 pound reptile that had been snatching water buffalo from the shore and was linked to at least 2 human deaths. For 3 weeks, residents of Bunuan lived in fear, with traps set across the Agusan marsh, baited with chicken and pigs, hoping they'd finally catch the thing that had turned their river into a hunting ground. They got him. It took over 100 people just to pull him out of the mud, and when they finally measured him, he broke the Guinness World Record for the largest crocodile in captivity. His name was Lolong, and every part of him looked prehistoric. His head alone was over 3 feet long. When he opened his mouth, it looked like a small car could fit inside. Officials said he was likely responsible for a missing fisherman and a 12-year-old girl who disappeared near the water. They never found the bodies, just torn clothing. But nobody questioned it. Locals already knew they weren't dealing with a regular animal. Even after his capture, people didn't feel safe. They started wondering if there were more out there just like him, waiting. Saltwater crocodiles can live for over 70 years, and Lolong was already estimated to be around 50 when they caught him. That meant he'd been patrolling those waters for decades, undetected, while people kept disappearing. When he was finally moved to an enclosure, tourists came from all over the country just to see him. But he didn't last long in captivity. Less than 2 years later, in 2013, he died of pneumonia and cardiac arrest, likely from stress. Even though he was dead, wildlife authorities still did a necropsy just to confirm whether he had human remains in his stomach. The results were inconclusive. But if you ask the villagers, they never needed confirmation. They already knew what he'd done. Bear. There's the beast. It is hard to determine the exact size of the crocodile from these images. Just like they did with Gustav, people in Burundi don't tell crocodile stories, they tell Gustav stories. This Nile crocodile has been the stuff of legend since the 1990s. Not because of his size, though at 18 to 20 feet long and nearly a ton, is massive, but because of what he's done. Locals say Gustav has killed over 300 people. Not animals. Not livestock. People. Fishermen, farmers, children collecting water. Entire villages built their lives around avoiding the riverbanks because they knew he could show up at any time. But the worst part of this whole story is that they never actually caught him. Wildlife experts tried. In 2004, a National Geographic team spent months building traps, setting up night cameras, and even using a live goat as bait to lure him in. They called it Capturing the Killer Croc. The documentary ended with every trap untouched. Gustav didn't even bother. It was like he knew. Locals say he's been shot multiple times, with AK-47s, no less, but he just keeps showing up, each time with new scars and the same unbothered attitude. His body is covered in gunshot wounds, and he's missing part of his tail. One of his eyes is clouded over, which might have been damaged in a fight or by a bullet that didn't do the job. The guy is indestructible. And unlike most crocs that stay low in the water and rely on stealth, Gustav doesn't hide. People have seen him crawl right up to the shore in broad daylight. He's too big to sneak up on anyone, but that doesn't stop him. Some survivors say he doesn't even eat all his victims, he just kills them and moves on. That's what makes him different. Nile crocodiles are already aggressive, but Gustav acts more like a serial killer than a predator. He doesn't follow the usual hunt-eat-hide pattern. He shows up, strikes, and disappears. The river stays quiet for weeks, maybe months, and then someone else goes missing. As of now, he's never been captured, never been found dead, and hasn't been seen on camera since around 2015. But every time a body shows up in the Ruzizi River, chewed up and half-eaten, people start whispering again. They say it's him. And nobody ever laughs when they say it. The same way they talk about the horrifying bears of Slovakia. Slovakia plans to cull up to 350 brown bears, nearly a quarter of the country's total population, after officials confirmed a bear killed a man in central Slovakia last weekend. Rescue teams found the 59-year-old's body near the town of Detva after he did not return from a walk in the woods. In early 2025, Slovakia made headlines by approving the culling of 350 brown bears, nearly a third of the country's estimated population, after a man was mauled to death while walking near a forested area. He was 59, unarmed, and reportedly just a few hundred meters from town when it happened. The attack wasn't some one-off freak incident. In the previous year alone, there had been over 1,900 bear-related complaints ranging from destroyed property and livestock kills to actual human injuries. Bears were breaking into garbage bins, wandering into backyards, and chasing people in broad daylight. The country's forest areas had basically become no-go zones. That's what pushed the government to act. After the fatal mauling, panic spread fast. Locals started arming themselves with pepper spray and makeshift weapons just to go hiking. Schools cancelled nature outings. Residents began uploading cell phone footage of bears crossing roads and standing outside houses like stray dogs. The cull was approved within weeks, but it wasn't without backlash. Environmental groups immediately called it excessive, arguing that it violated international conservation laws and could destabilize the ecosystem. They claimed most of these conflicts were being caused by human encroachment, not bear aggression. Some suggested non-lethal methods like relocation and better garbage management. But by then, it was too late. The decision was signed and hunters were already being deployed. Officials defended the move by pointing to stats, an estimated 1,000 plus bears in a country the size of Ireland with dense forests right next to towns. They said they had no choice, and for many locals, it felt like the only thing that would stop the attacks. There's actual footage online of these bears roaming neighborhoods, full-grown, not cubs. People walking their dogs or sitting on porches suddenly found themselves face-to-face with a 400-pound predator. Not many waited to see how friendly it was. The man who was killed in 2025 didn't make the news for days, not because it wasn't tragic, but because everyone in the region had already been bracing for it. That's what makes this story different. People weren't shocked. They were expecting it. But you know what no one expected? Tsavo man-eaters. Here, lions are a living nightmare. This is a hunting ground for lions that have decided to make their quarry human beings. The lion pair was said to have killed 135 people. Boom. Holy, __. 1898. It said the Tsavo man-eaters are the most widely studied man-eating pantherine cats, given their behavior of hunting humans as a pair, as well as dental injuries reported in one of the lions, a cause commonly attributed to big cats turning to humans as prey. In 1898, British engineers were building a railway bridge over the Tsavo River in Kenya. It was supposed to be a routine project, until two male lions showed up and started hunting the workers one by one. It wasn't attacking in self-defense, nor was it raiding livestock. This was a targeted attack on humans. At first, nobody believed it. 1 or 2 men went missing and the officials assumed they'd run off or gotten lost. Then tents were shredded. Bodies were dragged out into the night and never seen again. Workers started fleeing. Entire camps emptied out. Nobody wanted to stick around and end up the next name on the list. The lions weren't even like normal prides. These were maneless males, bigger than most, and they hunted without fear. They didn't wait for stragglers. They went inside tents, pulled people out as they slept, and vanished before anyone could react. In total, over 30 workers were killed, though locals claimed the number was closer to 135. The British officer in charge, Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson, set traps, built fences, posted armed guards, and none of it worked. Every time they thought they'd figured out a way to stop the attacks, the lions outsmarted it. People started calling them ghosts. It wasn't just the violence. It was the way they moved, silent, fast, deliberate. They didn't maul and run. They dragged their victims miles away and left the remains in caves or tall grass, untouched. Sometimes they didn't even eat the bodies. They just killed them and disappeared. It took 9 months to stop the attacks. Patterson eventually shot both lions, but only after multiple failed attempts and near-death encounters. The first lion took several bullets and kept charging. The second one ran off wounded and didn't die until he was shot again the next day. When they finally examined the bodies, both lions were huge. One measured over 9 feet from nose to tail. Their stomachs held traces of human remains. But the damage was already done. The railway workers had been terrorized and the British Empire had been humiliated by 2 animals that showed zero fear of man or gunfire. More than a century later, scientists still study the skulls to figure out what made them kill so many people. The lions didn't care about patterns or rules. They just kept coming, until someone put them down. And the Sundarbans tigers had the same outcome. There's a stretch of tangled mangrove forest between India and Bangladesh where people don't just fear tigers, they expect to be hunted by them. The Sundarbans is home to over 100 Royal Bengal tigers. But these aren't the usual, avoid humans unless desperate, kind. These tigers go looking for people. During the worst periods, especially in the 1970s and early 2000s, these attacks averaged 30 to 60 deaths a year. That's not an exaggeration. These were confirmed kills, often in broad daylight, and most happened the same way. A fisherman or honey collector goes into the forest and doesn't come back. Sometimes they'd find a shredded backpack. Sometimes just a sandal and blood in the mud. Locals have tried everything to stay alive. They wear masks on the back of their heads so the tiger thinks they're watching it. Some paint eyes on their boats, believing it might throw the tiger off. In some villages, families have built shrines just for protection. None of it has worked consistently. What makes these tigers different is their boldness. Most big cats avoid humans unless they are starving or provoked. Sundarbans tigers hunt humans like they are just another part of the food chain. Some researchers believe it's because this salty environment damages their sense of smell or makes prey harder to catch. But that doesn't explain why they go out of their way to stalk boats or break into temporary shelters. And they don't stop at killing. These tigers often drag the bodies away and eat them. Sometimes when authorities show up to investigate, the tiger is still there guarding the corpse. That kind of behavior isn't just dangerous, it's deliberate. Even now, despite all the tracking and tech, the problem hasn't gone away. Forest guards still patrol with rifles. Locals still go into tiger territory because they have no choice. Fishing and honey gathering are the only ways some of them can make money. Every year, people go missing, and most of the time, the bodies aren't recovered. You'd think we'd know how to handle tigers by now, but in the Sundarbans, they don't act like normal animals. They act like they've already claimed the place, and anyone who enters is trespassing. The tigress of Moradabad tried to do the same thing. In 2014, a tigress in the northern Indian district of Moradabad went on a 6-week killing spree that had everyone in the region on edge. This wasn't happening in some remote jungle, this was farmland, villages, and busy fields. And in that short window, the tiger killed 10 people, sometimes attacking in full view of others. At first, nobody even believed it was the same animal. A man was found mauled in the sugarcane fields. Then a woman collecting firewood vanished. Then a child was dragged off from the edge of a farm. It wasn't until a few bodies turned up with the same claw marks, the same deep bite wounds, that forest officials admitted what locals already knew: they weren't dealing with a scared animal, they were dealing with a man-eater. The strangest part is that this tigress had no cubs to protect. She wasn't cornered, injured, or starving. She just stopped caring about the human-animal boundary and went full predator. People say she stalked farmers like prey, waiting at the edges of the sugarcane, silent, watching. And when she attacked, she went for the head and neck, the way tigers take down deer. Once word got out, panic set in. Schools closed. People refused to go into the fields alone. Some villages set up drums and fireworks to scare her away. Others stopped working altogether. At one point, the search operation involved dozens of forest officials, armed guards, and 2 elephants, and even they couldn't catch her. She covered over 200 kilometers during the manhunt, crossing from one state to another like it was nothing. Authorities would spot her in one village, and she'd vanish the next day. Locals claimed she walked along canal banks, used trees as cover, and seemed to always stay one step ahead of the traps. It wasn't until February 2014, after more than a month of hunting, that they finally managed to tranquilize her near a riverbank. When they checked her condition, she was perfectly healthy, no injuries, no reason for the behavior. That's what made her so terrifying. She didn't attack out of desperation, she just chose a different kind of prey. And once she started, she didn't stop. And neither did the elephants of Kerala and Assam. In Kerala and Assam, India, the fear isn't about predators in the jungle, it's about elephants walking straight into towns and tearing them apart. These aren't isolated events. Over the past 2 decades, wild elephants have killed dozens, sometimes hundreds, of people every year. They smash houses, flip cars, rip up crops, and in some cases, attack entire villages in one night. Many of these rampages are caught on camera. Locals know when elephants show up, they better start recording, because it won't end quietly. One of the most shocking cases happened in May 2021, in Kerala's Palakkad district. A female elephant wandered into a village, ate fruit from a roadside stall, and accidentally bit into a pineapple stuffed with explosives, a trap meant for wild boars. It detonated in her mouth. Even with her jaw torn apart, she didn't lash out. Instead, she walked into a river and stood there for hours, bleeding, until she collapsed and died. That story made international headlines, but the aftermath was brutal. Elephants started showing up more often. People said the herd seemed angrier after that. Then in 2023, Assam saw one of its worst rampages in years. A single bull elephant killed 5 people in 24 hours, including an elderly woman who was dragged from her home. That same night, it trampled livestock and knocked down parts of a school building. Locals had no warning. It came in from the forest, smashed anything in its path, and disappeared by morning. Drones couldn't track it. Forest teams couldn't stop it. And this isn't just about one rogue animal. These rampages are happening more frequently because of shrinking habitats, deforestation, and broken migration routes. Elephants are intelligent, and when they lose access to food or see their paths blocked by farmland, they don't just wander back into the forest, they push through whatever's in the way. You'll find video after video of elephants charging down roads, lifting motorbikes, tearing down fences, even dragging people. And when a village hears trumpeting in the distance, they don't wait to see where it's coming from, they run. Because if that elephant decides to come through their town, nothing, not a house, not a wall, not even a crowd, is going to stop it. Speaking of crowds, the one in San Diego there to watch Tilikam's show was left traumatized. Most people see orcas and think playful dolphins in tuxedos. But the ones trapped in captivity, that's a different story. And no killer whale proved that more than Tilikam, an orca responsible for 3 deaths over the course of his life. He was captured in the wild in 1983, taken from his pod off the coast of Iceland when he was just a calf. From that point on, Tilikam was raised in tanks, trained to perform, and kept on a strict schedule, like a circus animal. But beneath the routines and smiling trainers, something was off. The first death happened in 1991 at a marine park in Canada. A trainer named Kelty Byrne slipped and fell into the pool with Tilikam and 2 other orcas. Witnesses said they toyed with her, dragging her underwater every time she tried to surface. She drowned before anyone could help. Tilikam was moved to SeaWorld Orlando after that. He was the largest orca in captivity, 22 feet long, weighing over 12,000 pounds, and became their star-breeding male. He performed daily, splashing crowds and doing tricks. But he was kept isolated for long stretches. Trainers weren't allowed to swim with him, and he was known to be unpredictable. Then in 1999, a 27-year-old man was found dead in Tilikam's tank. His clothes were folded neatly near the pool, but his body was discovered mauled, with multiple bite marks and injuries consistent with being held underwater. They ruled it a trespassing accident, but it was the second body linked to this whale. The final incident happened in 2010 during a live show. Tilikam's longtime trainer, Dawn Brancho, was pulled into the water by her ponytail in front of a full audience. Witnesses said he thrashed her around, held her underwater, and wouldn't let go. Rescue attempts failed, and she drowned. After that, Tilikum was retired from performances. He spent the rest of his life in a tank, surfacing occasionally but mostly isolated. He died in 2017 after years of declining health. Captivity didn't just break Tilikum, it weaponized him. This wasn't a wild orca acting on instinct. This was a frustrated, bored, highly intelligent animal whose environment turned him violent. And every time the tank gate closed, people just hoped he wouldn't do it again. Just like they hoped the lions of Mfuw were done with their vengeance. In 1991, the Zambian town of Mfuw found itself being stalked by a lion that didn't behave like any other. This wasn't a rogue cat defending territory. It was an unusually large, maneless male, and it moved through villages like it owned them. Over the span of just a few months, at least 6 people were killed. All were attacked near their homes, not in the deep bush, not while out hunting. This lion walked right into populated areas. It dragged victims out of huts. Some were killed in broad daylight. It didn't care about noise, torches, or crowds. It came and went as it pleased. Locals tried to stay indoors after dark. Makeshift barriers went up. Hunters were sent to track it, but none were successful. The problem wasn't just that the lion was bold, it was that it seemed to be watching. Villagers reported seeing glowing eyes at the edges of fields, only for someone to go missing the next morning. People were so terrified they refused to sleep. Some families moved entirely. The government eventually stepped in and called in a professional hunter, Wayne Hosek, an American on safari in the area. He set up bait and waited for nights on end, studying the lion's patterns. Eventually, he got his shot and brought the lion down. What they found shocked even seasoned trackers. The lion was over 10 feet long from nose to tail and weighed an estimated 500 pounds. It had no mane, giving it a ghost-like look at night, and its body was covered in battle scars, signs of fights with other lions or animals. It was perfectly healthy. No injuries, no starvation, nothing that would explain why it started targeting humans. Its stomach contained remains consistent with the most recent victim. But even that didn't explain the aggression. Most lions avoid people unless provoked. This one seemed to seek them out. The body was preserved and is now on display at the Field Museum in Chicago, mounted exactly how it was found, massive, scarred, and silent. For the people in Mfuw, it wasn't just a lion. It was something else entirely. And they still talk about it like it's out there somewhere, waiting. Similar to how they talk about the tiger of Chowgar. Between 1925 and 1930, the hill region of Uttarakhand, India, was being hunted by a tigress that didn't follow any of the usual patterns. She wasn't defending cubs. She wasn't injured. She was simply killing people. And by the time the reports reached officials, the death toll had already hit 64. She became known as the Tiger of Chowgar, and her territory stretched across more than 1,500 kilometers. She attacked shepherds, villagers, women carrying water, anyone who walked alone. The strikes were always sudden and brutal. Most victims never even saw her coming. When tracker Jim Corbett was brought in, he didn't just find claw marks and half-eaten bodies. He found a community that had been living in fear for years. People had stopped farming. Families abandoned villages. Entire areas had been left empty because no one could risk going outside. Corbett tracked the tigress for months. And what made this hunt different was how calculated she was. She shifted locations constantly, never returning to the same spot twice, and sometimes waited weeks before striking again. Her ability to vanish into the jungle kept her one step ahead of every trap. Eventually, it became clear this wasn't just one tiger. It was a mother and her sub-adult cub. The tigress was the main killer, but the cub had started following her lead. Corbett managed to shoot the cub first, ending a growing threat. But the mother remained at large for months. When he finally caught up to her, it took multiple shots to bring her down. She was old, and one of her canine teeth was broken, which might have made it hard for her to hunt natural prey. But she wasn't starving. She was methodical, well-fed, and experienced. And she'd been killing for over 5 years. This wasn't just a wild animal defending itself. This was a tiger that adapted to hunting humans and became frighteningly good at it. The number of victims, 64 confirmed, possibly more, made her one of the deadliest big cats in recorded history. Even now, locals still refer to her by name. Not as a legend, as something that actually happened. Would you be able to escape any of these beasts? Subscribe now and become a part of Expedition Diaries for more.